The ballroom glittered like a universe built for people who had never worried about rent, never counted coins at a grocery checkout, never held a crying child at 2 a.m., wondering how to stretch love when money ran out. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen fireworks above silk gowns and tailored tuxedos, their reflections dancing across polished marble floors. Laughter flowed easily here. Soft, confident laughter, the kind that assumed it belonged. And standing just inside the entrance, adjusting a borrowed jacket that didn't quite fit his shoulders, was Daniel Hayes, a single father who already felt like a guest mistake the universe would correct any second. Daniel hadn't planned to come. He'd stared at the invitation for days, convinced it was a joke or a clerical error. The annual Blackwell Foundation Gala wasn't just exclusive. It was legendary. Billionaires, tech giants, political elites. And Daniel? He fixed medical equipment for a living and packed peanut butter sandwiches for his 8-year-old daughter every morning before school. The only reason he was here at all was because a former client had insisted, saying Daniel had earned a night like this. Still, as eyes slid over him, lingering just long enough to judge, Daniel felt every inch of the distance between him and this world. Whispers began almost immediately. Who invited him? Is that jacket rented? Looks like he got lost on the way to the parking lot. Daniel heard it all. Years of parent-teacher meetings alone, late nights working double shifts, and learning how to swallow pride had trained him well. He kept his posture calm, his expression neutral. He wasn't here to impress anyone. He was here because, for once, someone had told him he deserved to be. Across the room, laughter spiked louder near a circle of donors, comparing watches worth more than Daniel's car. One woman glanced at him openly, lips curling in amusement. Honestly, she said, not bothering to lower her voice, they'll let anyone in if it makes them look charitable enough. A ripple of chuckles followed. Daniel's hand tightened around the simple program he held. He thought of his daughter, Emma, back home with the neighbor. How she'd hugged him earlier and said, "Daddy, you look handsome, like a hero in a movie." The memory steadied him. Then the lights dimmed. The murmurs softened as the host took the stage. Victor Blackwell, the billionaire behind the foundation. Media-shy, razor-sharp, known for crushing business deals with a polite smile. When he walked into the spotlight, the room leaned forward instinctively. This was a man whose attention could change lives. Victor scanned the audience slowly, methodically, until his gaze stopped. On Daniel, something unreadable passed through Victor's expression. Recognition, curiosity. No one noticed except Daniel. The auction began. Artwork, vintage wine, private island retreats. Bids flew effortlessly, numbers climbing faster than Daniel could process. Every paddle raised felt like a reminder that this room spoke a language he didn't. Then came the final item. A private, closed-door investment opportunity, the auctioneer announced. One seat, personally curated by Mr. Blackwell himself. The room stirred. This wasn't just money, this was access. Bidding exploded. 5 million. 7. 10. Daniel watched in stunned silence. He didn't even realize Victor had stepped forward again until the billionaire's voice cut through the room. "I'd like to place a different kind of bid." Silence fell so sharply it felt physical. Victor turned, gesturing not to the elite front rows but toward the back. Toward Daniel. "I bid," Victor said calmly, "on the man they laughed at." Gasps. Confusion. A few incredulous laughs that died instantly. Victor continued, voice steady. "That man repaired a pediatric imaging system at one of our partner hospitals at 3 in the morning, unpaid because children were waiting. He refused compensation. Said, 'I'm a dad. I'd want someone to do the same for my kid.'" The room froze. Daniel's chest tightened. His ears rang. I bid my entire investment seat, Victor finished, to hear his story, and I promise you, it will be worth more than anything sold tonight. No one spoke. No one dared. Every eye in the room shifted, this time not in mockery, but in stunned respect, toward the single dad who had walked in unnoticed. And Daniel realized something in that moment. This night wasn't about charity. It was about truth. And it was only just beginning. The silence after Victor Blackwell's words didn't fade. It thickened. It pressed against the walls, against the crystal glasses, against the carefully constructed confidence of people who had never been publicly wrong. Daniel stood frozen, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure the microphones would catch it. He hadn't planned a speech. He hadn't planned anything beyond surviving the evening unnoticed. And now the most powerful man in the room had placed him at the center of it. Victor stepped off the stage and walked toward Daniel. Not hurried, not dramatic, just deliberate. Each step felt like a drumbeat. When he stopped in front of Daniel, he extended his hand. Daniel hesitated for half a second, then took it. The billionaire's grip was firm, grounding. "You don't look like someone who enjoys spotlights," Victor said quietly, just loud enough for those closest to hear. Daniel swallowed. "I don't." A flicker of a smile touched Victor's face. "Good. Neither do the people who matter." He guided Daniel toward the stage. Cameras adjusted. Phones lifted. The same mouths that had mocked him earlier now hung open, desperate to understand what they were witnessing. The auctioneer stepped back, unsure of his role anymore. Victor faced the audience again. "Tonight we celebrate generosity. But generosity without humility is just vanity with better." Lighting. A few heads lowered. "This man didn't know who I was when we met. He didn't care. He cared about a hospital machine that needed fixing because children were waiting." Victor turned to Daniel. "Tell them why you did it." Daniel's hands trembled slightly, but he didn't step back. "Because my daughter once waited," he said. His voice cracked but didn't break. "She was scared. Machines were down. Doctors were frustrated. And I promised her I'd make sure other kids didn't have to feel that helpless." The room shifted. This wasn't a pitch. It wasn't polished. It was raw. A woman in the front row wiped her eyes. One of the men who had laughed earlier stared at the floor like it had personally betrayed him. Daniel continued, quieter now. "I didn't know this room existed. I still don't belong in it. But I know what it means to show up when no one's watching." Victor nodded once. Then he turned back to the crowd. "This," he said, "is what leadership looks like before it ever becomes wealth." Applause began slowly, uncertain at first, then grew. Not the polite clapping of donors, but something heavier. Respect. Recognition. Daniel felt it wash over him, not as pride, but as relief. For the first time in years, he wasn't invisible. And somewhere in the applause, a realization settled into the room. They hadn't just underestimated a man. They'd exposed themselves. After the gala, Daniel assumed things would return to normal. That he'd wake up, pack Emma's lunch, and go back to fixing machines while this night faded into a strange memory. But life doesn't always rewind the way we expect. 2 days later, Daniel was called into a glass-walled office overlooking the city. Victor Blackwell stood by the window, hands behind his back. "I'm not here to offer you charity," Victor said before Daniel could speak. "I hate charity that humiliates." Daniel nodded. "Then I don't want it." Victor turned, eyes sharp. "Good. I'm offering you responsibility." He explained quickly. "A new initiative. A foundation arm focused not on donations but infrastructure. Preventing breakdowns before emergencies happened. Hospitals in underserved regions. Systems built by people who understood the consequences of failure. I want you to lead it," Victor said. Daniel laughed softly, disbelief slipping out. I fix machines. Victor smiled. You fix problems. Machines are just what you're used to touching. The offer came with numbers Daniel had never imagined. Resources, authority, platform. But Daniel didn't answer immediately. He thought of Emma, of evenings missed, of promises made. I won't become someone she doesn't recognize, Daniel said finally. Victor extended his hand again. Then you're exactly who I want. News spread fast. Headlines twisted the story. Some praised him. Others questioned him. Why him? What makes a single dad qualified? The same question, just dressed in nicer words. Daniel answered by working. Quietly, relentlessly. Hospitals stabilized. Systems improved. And every success reminded people that competence didn't require pedigree. One evening, Emma asked him, Daddy, are you famous now? He smiled. No, kiddo. Just useful. She hugged him tighter. That's better. If you believe real success looks like this, don't forget to subscribe. Stories like this deserve to be told and shared. A year later, the gala returned. Same room, same lights, same people. But when Daniel walked in this time, conversations paused. Not in mockery, but acknowledgement. Heads turned. Space opened. Respect had reshaped the air. Victor took the stage once more. Last year, he said, we learned something uncomfortable. That power doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up late, wearing a borrowed jacket. Soft laughter followed. Victor gestured toward Daniel. This year's highest bid won't go to a vacation or a painting. It goes to impact. And the highest bidder isn't the richest person in the room. He raised his paddle. I bid trust, Victor said, in people who show up when it's hard. No one tried to outbid him, because they finally understood. Daniel looked out over the room. Not with resentment, not with triumph, but with calm. He hadn't won. He hadn't proved them wrong. He had simply been himself long enough for the truth to catch up. And that silence, the respectful, humbled silence, spoke louder than all the laughter ever had. If this story reminded you that dignity can't be bought, subscribe to the channel. More stories like this are coming, and the next one might hit even closer to home. Success didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived quietly, the way real change always does. Daniel noticed it one morning while tying Emma's shoelaces before school. His hands were steady, not because life had become easy, but because fear no longer lived in every corner of it. The panic of what if something breaks and I can't fix it had loosened its grip. He still worked long hours, still carried responsibility heavier than any paycheck, but now that weight had purpose. The foundation grew faster than anyone predicted. Hospitals in places the world rarely filmed began sending letters. Not reports, letters. Handwritten notes from nurses who said machines no longer failed mid-procedure. From parents who said they didn't have to wait and pray anymore. Daniel read every single one. He kept them in a drawer at home, not the office. Because this work belonged to his life, not his title. Victor watched from a distance. He didn't hover. He didn't interfere. One evening, over a quiet dinner far from cameras, he asked Daniel, "Do you know why I chose you?" Daniel shrugged. "You've told me. The hospital." Victor shook his head. "No, because when no one was watching, you still acted like someone was." That stayed with Daniel. Not everyone applauded his rise. Some donors quietly withdrew. Some executives whispered that he was temporary, that he didn't look like leadership. Daniel heard about it the same way he'd always heard things, indirectly, dismissively, and late. But this time, the whispers didn't stick. Results spoke louder than pedigree ever could. One afternoon, Daniel received an invitation he never expected. A small panel discussion. No glamour, no auction, just a room full of students. Young, uncertain, carrying that same invisible weight he once had. He almost said no. Public speaking still terrified him. But Emma looked up from her homework and said, "You tell me stories all the time, Daddy. Tell them one too." So he did. He didn't talk about money. He didn't talk about Victor. He talked about fixing things, about showing up tired, about being underestimated and choosing not to become bitter, about how dignity isn't something you demand. It's something you practice, even when no one rewards it. When he finished, the room didn't erupt into applause. They sat quietly, listening. That silence felt familiar, and this time it felt right. Later that night, as Daniel tucked Emma into bed, she asked, "Are you happy now?" He paused, then smiled. "I think I always was. I just didn't know it counted." Outside, the city hummed. Somewhere, deals were being made. Numbers moved. Power shifted. But in that small room, with a light left on and a child drifting to sleep, Daniel understood the truth that had taken him a lifetime to learn. Respect isn't given by wealth. Worth isn't decided by rooms you're allowed into. And the quiet people, the ones who keep showing up, are the ones who change everything. If the story stayed with you, don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us who we are and who we can become.